Hello, everyone. Real quick before the podcast starts. In this episode, we're talking a lot about our favorite games from this year, favorite characters, soundtracks, stuff like that. We go through a lot of different games, so if you want to know a game's title or where to check out a game or whatever, go to the description. We have a list of all the games we talk about down there, and hope you enjoy. And welcome into the Gaming Discourse. I am Tyler Frater alongside Richard Day the Cruz.
I've already fucked up 2022, but 2023 is my year, baby. Let's do this. Let's go.
Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
New year, same me.
It is January 3rd, 2022. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, where we post video. Latest video is about Midnight Protocol. Go check it out. Working on a few new videos right now. One about Halo Infinite and one about a game called Gloomhaven. Two of which,
mad lad.
I know, right? Two videos at once. Who am I? Steven Spielberg? Am I right? Now I've lost my train of thought. Oh, so this week is a bit of a different week since it's the end of the year. We're doing something that nobody else does.
The end of the year?
Already?
Or it's the beginning of the year. Whatever. God, we're already making those stupid jokes. Anyway.
Well, no, it's the start of the year.
You know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. No,
I don't.
for sure.
Has the entire Earth, is everybody still at the new year? Or is there like still a sliver?
Happy birthday.
Every day is the start of a new year for me.
Anyway, so...
Congratulations, Earth. Happy birthday. 2022 years old. Who would have guessed it?
We're going to be looking back on the year, recapping some topics, have a freewheeling discussion about a lot of different stuff, and then we'll get into our favorite games of this year. We can talk about the games we've been playing, but some of the games that we've started playing and have been playing are games that we're going to talk about as we recap. We're going to do our favorite games. We're going to do favorite soundtracks, favorite characters. We've decided to shift away from awards just because awards can be weird. And do we do one award? Do we do three for each person?
Yeah, and it's hard to get through so many things.
Sure.
When we also have our own, things outside of the podcast to do. I have a job that takes a lot of my time, and everyone
Richard's
has
an adult,
things.
Unlike the rest of us, but whatever. I'm kidding.
And it's I have like 5 JRPGs on my backlog, and it's like 100 hours each. It's like I can't do this. So.
Right. Yeah, and of course we haven't played every game. I think one game that I still want to get to, like I want to get to Inscription, I want to get to Sable. Kenya, Bridge of Spirits is one that I want to get to. So there's a bunch of games that I haven't gotten to that I want to. And of course, I have 28 days to do it because February comes and it's Elden Ring and Horizon 2 next month, which is crazy to think.
Yes.
But anyway, so we'll just get it right into...
Well, I've got a game that's not on the list of games that I included.
We'll kick it off with that then.
I think. Let me double check.
That we've been playing, or
that I've been playing.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, I didn't include it on here. Phantom Doctrine. Okay. It is a. I'm trying to think of the proper. What's XCOM? What is that genre?
Tactical.
Turn-based tactical. Okay, yeah. Set in the 80s during the Cold War. You play as agents of the CIA or the KGB, depending on which side you choose. And while it's very fun, there's a lot of things that just don't make sense in the game. The thing that always pops up to mind when I've talked about it is, so you're playing as members of stealth organizations, subterfuge and everything.
Sure.
So there's a lot of emphasis in the game about stealth. But there's a lot of things you can do that aren't stealthy that don't break the game or that break the game. So for example, XCOM 2, kind of similar thing. It's very stealth focused. And I was telling you about this earlier, Tyler. If you jump through a window and there's enemies anywhere nearby, they'll get alerted. I can jump through a window in Phantom Doctrine right in front of someone. And as long as I'm behind them and not in their cone of vision, they don't notice.
That is strange.
Yeah.
It's better than whistling at them.
Yeah, exactly. But there are really good things because it's set in the world. You recruit agents and they can speak different languages. And if you're in a region that they have that language, they can shout out things in the regional dialect to distract the guards.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Or you could have people go in disguises and stuff like that. And then because again, stealth game, getting into firefights isn't, the best option. And the more that happens, the more heat your operatives pull, and you have to forge new identities for them.
Oh, cool. That's neat.
Yeah.
I like that.
But that, that costs money, so it's a resource drain. So it incentivizes going stealthy. It's really good so far, but there are some like glaring weak points. Unless you're just making terrible decisions, it's hard to not, fail. You're just always on top. So, I don't know. I mean, it might just be a difficulty thing. I'm playing, the normal difficulty, but it's really easy.
Oh, okay.
So maybe I just need to up the difficulty.
Yeah, that or it's a different philosophy from XCOM, which is just everybody's gonna die.
Don't believe the percentages.
Yeah.
Well, this one, there aren't percentages for shooting.
Oh, okay.
It just gives you a damage band that, your gun will do. And every shot hits unless, there's something obstructing them.
But each bullet, like the bullets do particular type. It could be anywhere in that damage.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So
So
you're not gonna miss entirely.
Yeah. So you could deal very little damage, or you can outright kill them with one shot.
Interesting. That's a huge range.
Yeah.
That's a very big range. Okay. So yeah, I've been playing Halo Infinite, Gloomhaven, but I want to talk about those when we get to them because I have a lot to say about them. Is there a game you want to talk about right off the bat?
Yeah, the only thing I've been playing for the last week is Hades.
Oh yeah,
I've
nice.
jumped back onto Hades. I have so much to say about that game, and when I played it early last year, I really enjoyed it. Now I'm playing it again a lot more earnestly and a lot more just a lot more. And I been thinking about this a lot the last couple days, and I think that myself personally, I believe that Hades might be a perfect game, or at least very close to it. I think that the difficulty that it presents is well designed and has a really great arc as far as improving yourself throughout each run.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that the story is immensely rewarding and nonstop. You beat it and you're not done. You are far from done. There are no credit rolls. There is more stuff to do. And until you figure that out, you will still continue getting very small but very important story bits. The voice acting is stunning, and the writing itself is really good as well. It won a BAFTA because of it. Its visual style is incredible as well. Its artwork is amazing. And I can't stop thinking about Hades. And so I go home and I've been playing it every single day since, the beginning of last week. And I'm having trouble trying to get off of it to play other things because I know it's already a 1.5-year-old game. And I need to play other stuff, but this is so good, and it's both exhilarating and scary to hear that a coworker that I work with has already done like 200+ hours on it and is still finding new stuff.
Yeah.
Oof.
And it's like that sounds exhausting, but like I said, it sounds exhilarating because of what I get, what the game gives me. I want to see it. Mm-hmm. It's so good. I want to see it. So that's all I got to say. But Hades is specifically what I've been playing the last week. That's it.
I would agree. I don't think there's anything about Hades that I dislike. I mean, it sure is difficult and that can be frustrating, but it's not difficult in a bad way. I can't think of things that I like. Yeah, I can't think of things that I dislike about the game like I can with Returnal or some other roguelike or whatever. So yeah, I don't think that's something crazy to say at all. Okay, but like I said, I'll hop into my games when we get there. Okay, so a quick recap, or maybe a lengthy recap, I don't know, of what was a very long year. There's no denying that.
Absolutely it was.
The two stories Richard, you have a few stories you wanted to talk about.
Kind of just like things, yeah.
Yeah, then the two things that I wanted to mention, stories or concepts, themes, whatever. The first thing we have to touch on that happened this year is the Activision Blizzard lawsuit by the California Department of Fair and Equal Housing. And that saga has continued all the way up to a couple weeks ago, and it started in July, I think. So that's been going 6 months. And what we've learned about Bobby Kotick, what we've learned about Activision, the Bill Cosby suite was something that happened, which there's a lot of context surrounding that. Not to excuse it, but as we head into the next year, and as companies see this, I can't help but think there has to be a gigantic systemic culture shift somehow that's going to happen, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And Activision Blizzard wasn't the only place we heard stories about. Bungie was another place. There were smaller studios, Scavenger Studio that we talked about a while ago. So after Ubisoft and Activision Blizzard, I don't know how you could be a gigantic company. Like, I don't want to name companies, but on the scale of Activision Blizzard and have this sort of systemic problem and either not know about it or know about it, but you're still sort of sitting back hoping that nobody sees it. Yeah. Because with the outpouring and with the people that have talked at Riot, then Ubisoft, then Activision Blizzard, then Bungie, and innumerable other companies, it's no longer I don't think it's something that is like people are hesitant. I mean, I'm sure they're hesitant to talk about, but not the same way that they were 10 years ago.
Absolutely. They are. That is the best thing to come out of this. Yeah. These unfortunate stories is that now we've heard so much of it, and we have seen, I'm not going to say we've seen repercussions, but we've seen the heat being turned up on these companies, that it's definitely, I'm sure folks who have been wronged in some way, shape, or form do now have the strength to come forward and say more and provide more, wood to that proverbial fire, to try to start change into these companies. And I know that I think Neil Druckmann tweeted the other day, and he stated that that they've already made changes in the studio.
Oh yeah, Naughty Dog was another. Yeah,
Naughty Dog was another one. Yeah, and they said that after those changes, like things, I think changes to the work week and like how they work there. He alluded that in his tweet that things are going great now. But of course, he's the one heading the show, so who knows if anybody else disagrees with him. But you don't come out publicly and say that.
You would think.
At least you would think, yes.
You would think.
Yes, you would think.
There was a specific company that made a sci-fi video game that told Jason Schreier they weren't going to crunch, and went ahead and backtracked on that.
That's true.
And then their game was pulled from this PlayStation Store, which also happened this year, which could be its own story on it, by itself. Wow. I'm interested to see. Yeah, Cyberpunk.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see what it takes to get a CEO removed. Yves Guillemot still at the head of Ubisoft, and Bobby Kotick. It baffles me that we know that he drafted, for whatever reason, the thing that has stuck with me is that he drafted that Francis Townsend letter, right? Because when the Activision Blizzard stuff dropped, you had Alan J. Brack, who did step down. So executives left who had been at Blizzard, Activision, whatever, for a long time. And his response was apologetic, remorseful, whatever. And Frances Townsend's response, at least her letter, was, these allegations are false. I never took steroids, pointing at Congress, Mark McGuire defiant, just ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And then we learned Kotick drafted that. And it's not only is it a man drafting a woman's executive's letter, but it's also a story about pervasive sexism in a frat boy culture. It would be hilarious if it weren't true, right?
Can't make it up.
Yeah,
but it happened.
You can't make that kind of thing up. And so I'm curious as to what would have to happen at a company to remove a CEO. And I'm also don't want to see that happen because it would probably have to be something horrific. Like Andrew Wilson would have to like rip someone's face off on camera and then walk up to the camera and say, I ripped this artist's face off, me, Andrew Wilson. And then they'd be, okay, well, we'll put him on suspension, non-paid suspension for 6 months. Like that's what would happen. So yeah, I don't know what, but I feel like that's probably the biggest story from this year. And it's not going to end. I think we'll probably have updates on it going into 2022, unfortunately.
This is something that's not going to solve itself obviously immediately overnight.
Yeah,
so
sure.
We're definitely going to see more. Either, as bad, hopefully not worse stories than what we've already got, but there's definitely now watchful eyes on these companies.
Yep. And then the other thing is unionization. If you are somebody who ideologically is against unionization, I'm fine with that, whatever. Like, I'm not going to argue economics or whatever. But I do want to hear other solutions.
Yeah.
Because if you're saying unionization is bad for the video game industry because X, Y, and Z,
then what are you
that's
gonna do
fine.
about it?
I'll listen to that. But what are you going to do to solve all these other issues? Because so many of these artists and developers, they go to journalists, but they don't have somebody in their corner.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not going to sit here and argue that unions would solve everything and it would be a perfect system right off the bat. Probably not. And I'm not an expert in all that stuff. But at the same time, you used the analogy last week that it's like with something else, but you're driving down the road and all of your tires are popped. Like at some point you have to, at some point you got to fix the tires. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, well, I don't want to fix the tires. Well, then what else are we going to do? Come up with a different solution.
Yeah.
If you're ideologically against tires,
but
fine.
the free market will correct itself.
Which is just not true because it just hasn't and it's not going to. And you can't. I understand, and this is something that we've also talked about. If people have personal stances on whether or not weren't going to buy a Blizzard game.
Yeah,
that's totally acceptable.
Sure.
Like I don't think that's wrong. I don't think that's dumb, whatever. I would disagree with people who will call boycotts and say you shouldn't do this or that. That's just because I don't think that's a solution. Because like, for example, Call of Duty, so many people buy Call of Duty, from hardcore gamers to a guy that works 60 hours a week and he buys a PS5 and Call of Duty because that's what he does here and there, but he's not doing other things, right? And that guy has no idea what's going on with Bobby Kotick because he didn't follow that kind of news.
Exactly.
So it's like, so I don't think that's necessarily a solution. But so yeah, when people say like, vote with your wallets, boycott, I just don't. It would be effective, but I just don't think it's realistic to try. So unfortunately you're putting the onus on the people that have the power to give up the power and make changes themselves. But unionization may be an option there.
I think it's also ridiculous that like the naysayers for unionization like don't look at essentially historically unions have done more good than they have bad, at least for the workers themselves. So it's kind of one of those like the data's against you. So,
sure.
In a sense, but yeah, I also don't think there's as of now a better solution than that because there would be no I've had the word in my head all week.
Incentive?
No. Accountability.
Oh, okay. Sure.
There would be no accountability for everything that Kotick knows, does, or the guys who are under him. So yeah, I think unions solve that issue. So
yeah, or at least a solution, part of the solution, a step forward, whatever any platitude you want to put there. But if you're against that, fine. But I want to hear other options because the video game industry has to do something. Because I may be a little cynical, but I don't believe that the companies I'm would not be surprised if this is going on at other big AAA companies, and I would not be surprised if they are sitting back counting the money from their AAA release and not giving a shit about the stuff that's going on. So, but that may be really cynical. We can return to that topic at any point. The other thing
we're going to because ongoing.
Well,
Yes.
yes, of course. On right now's podcast, though,
Oh.
on today's podcast. The other thing I wanted to discuss was the NFT thing that has cropped up toward the end of the year.
Yeah.
So non-fungible tokens are not the future of the industry if your future of the industry is a future where video games are as good as they can be. If video games are as profitable as they can be, then NFTs are part of the industry. Square Enix's president put out a New Year's open letter to the company, and I guess it was an open letter to whoever would read it. Yosuke Matsuda. I spelled it out phonetically, so I pronounce it correctly. And I have a quote from here. It's a very long letter that says a lot of stuff. It's a lot of word salad. It's a lot of, I don't know.
It talks a lot, but it doesn't say
People
much.
shaking the Scrabble box and then like dumping it and like, there's a
boggle.
word.
Yeah, boggle.
Yeah, boggle. Yeah. But anyway, I wanted to read this from the letter. It came out January 1st, so just a couple days ago. Quote, I realize that some people who play to have fun and who currently form the majority of players have voiced their reservation. Excuse me, I'm going to restart this. This is about Square Enix implementing NFTs. I should have provided the context before I read it.
Yes.
Yeah, eventually, in talking about blockchain, he vomited all of the
Jargon.
the
keywords.
It's like he just made out with Mark Zuckerberg, and then this was the vomit that happened afterwards. So, with regards to Square Enix and NFTs, quote, I realize that some people who play to have fun and who currently form the majority of players have voiced their reservations toward these new trends, and understandably so. However, I believe that there will be a certain number of people whose motivation is to play to contribute, by which I mean to help make the game more exciting. Traditional gaming has offered no explicit incentive to this latter group of people. I see this as one reason that there hasn't been as many major game-changing content that were user-generated as one would expect, end quote. So there are so many things wrong with this paragraph that it is stunning that this person is the CEO of a game company. And
Is it though?
yes,
This kind of
it is.
ignorance and arrogance and detachment from the video game industry isn't really that surprising from a CEO.
It's stunning, it's tone deaf, it's stupid, it's inane, it's insipid. I'm just going to open up a thesaurus and just read everything underneath.
All the synonyms.
All the synonyms. And there's so much we could get into here. But the idea that people who play to have fun, you're just going to brush that aside as if that's not the foundation to an entire entertainment industry, because you have found this other little niche where people will play or pay for bullshit. I just don't understand. And I guess partially I understand because it's money. I don't understand because the universe is meaningless. You're here for 80 years. Why not do something meaningful instead of something stupid like this? He said, traditional gaming has offered no explicit incentive to this latter group of people. It has been tried before. Steam tried paid mods that ruin mods. That's not the point of mods. Have you ever played Arma 3? The modding community is alive and well on Steam. Forgotten City, which is another game that I wanted to play this year, haven't gotten to it, is a mod off Skyrim. It's a whole new game now. Sold well. Got great reviews. Insurgency used to be a mod. We can go on and on about games that started as source mods and that became their own development studios. Modding is a thriving community. And I don't think listen, do I want people to get paid for their work? Yes. Is that a more complicated discussion than modders shouldn't get paid? Yes. I also don't think that if you open up a storefront to pay for mods, then all of a sudden you're taking that and you are profiting. It's not like you're an advocate for that modder to make money off of the mod, right? And Bethesda did this too. I don't know if they're still doing it. It doesn't matter. So I mean, but anyway, back to the NFT thing. It's just it's dumb.
I'm just confused by his play to contribute, by which I mean to help make the game more exciting.
Yeah, that's why you have
That's why you make a video
How does that make the game more
That's
exciting?
why you have developers, dipshit. Like, pay them, cut your salary in half, pay them more, and they'll make the game more exciting.
Yeah.
This is
Cut your salary in half,
This
expand
is
your developer
so
count by 10,000.
infuriating. This is so insanely infuriating. That I don't know this guy personally, so I don't want to call him names, even though I just call him a dipshit. But it's just it is talking to a child level of condescension, right? Like, and it just makes my blood boil, because and I said this with Ubisoft, these companies don't have principles. They're like a dog chasing a car, right? Like in The Dark Knight. They don't know what they want to do. They just want to catch it, right? It's all they are. It's just a mindless dog chasing after a mail truck. It's with no principles, nothing whatsoever. But at least at the end of the day, we can pet a dog because dogs are nice. Companies ruin lives, have horrible corporate cultures, and exploit their workers, and have CEOs that don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. Anyway, NFTs are stupid.
Yes.
And they're not a part of the future of games, unless your future of games is this horrific dystopian nightmare world where you pay for every inch of ground you step on, and the game is completely about like Martin Shkreli dudes walking around showing off their new helmet in Halo Infinite, but no one's actually playing Capture the Flag. If that's your future, go crazy with NFTs. But I hardly doubt anyone that takes life seriously or art and entertainment seriously would like that future.
And it's not like the two fields he's talking about are mutually exclusive. Because, like, Eve is not a game without the player contribution.
Yes. There are so many games that would not exist
every
without
time
player
you hear a story about Eve, the developers had nothing to do with that.
I made a video about the fuel rats.
Yeah.
Completely player formed and Elite Dangerous. Like, it's like a, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to do some stupid analogy. It's just stupid. Yosuke Matsuda should be embarrassed that this dumb letter, which was probably drafted by Bobby Kotick. Sorry. Okay. Go talk about the things you want to talk about, Richard.
Oh, no, I was just gonna
Anyway, I'm sorry.
NFTs are gonna happen.
Don't say that.
You know, people got mad at DLC, horse armor.
Yeah,
Look
that's true.
where it ended up. You know,
Yeah.
they're providing these powers that be who now enjoy the idea of a JPEG image being sold for, you know, $20K. You know that they can get these guys because there are people who make a lot of money that play video games, which is unfortunate. They're trying to provide a solution to a problem that does not exist.
Sure.
And more often than not, if I've used the analogy, someone has to commit suicide, like, you know, business suicide, in order for it to open the floodgates.
Sure.
And people don't like it now, but they'll find a way to do it. They'll find a way to do it, and it's gonna start a. We'll see, but you know, I don't like it. Who does? No one does. But no one liked horse armor either, and look where we are now.
Yeah,
So,
that's a really good point.
it's unfortunate to say, but and you know what? Also, I think about it, and it's just like, well, I think about NFTs. How could you do NFTs? And I made the analogy last week of hats and Team Fortress, Counter-Strike skins and stuff like that. And those are technically, I mean, if you want to be vague, those are NFTs in a sense. But I also see if you introduce something like that inside of console gaming, where the average person exists, not PC gaming, but the average person exists.
Sure.
Then you're going to have adults, parents specifically, find out what that is. And I kind of hope this happens. They're going to relate that to gambling. And then then we might get the government involved into this.
So Richard, you have two sides.
I do.
You have like the extremely cynical, like, retail side, and then you have the encyclopedia of gaming, like,
okay,
knowledgeable side. I'm surprised that you would hope that, because I would think that your cynical side would think parents are just gonna, what do you want? I just need you to shut the hell up so I can watch the Cardinals game. You want a $15 NFT shirt, Tim? Here, take the credit card.
You're right. They're like that until their kid spends $3,000 on FIFA.
Sure, yeah.
You know, and Chris Person, who does highlight reel on Kotaku, used to be Kotaku, but now it's its own thing. he made a really good tweet that was like, it's like if some dude got high, or no, not sorry, it's like some asshole came up to Nintendo and was like, what if you can buy Mario's hat? And everyone just went, are you fucking stupid and high? Like, that was his tweet. And it's like, that is a very good point. Like, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? They're going to find a way.
Yeah.
They'll find some way, unfortunately. They always do. If you throw enough money at it, they will.
Man.
That's it. That's all I wanted to say about
We could
NFTs.
have people on Pluto telescopes launching James Webb telescopes from Pluto.
Yeah.
We could have ships going to Alpha Centauri. This is the future that we have. Climate change and NFTs. What are we talking about next? Do you have any other stories you want to get to?
There's a lot that happened this year, actually, but it's been so long that I forget. I was going to talk about, I mean, I did mention it before we started the podcast, but even though we had a lot of like really big releases this year, when I think about like all the releases, I can barely name any of them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I really can't. But if you ask me about like a lot of the indie games that came out this year, I can name a good amount of them. And I think that due to the fact that indie games thrive in a environment that's from home, we were able to see a lot more indie releases this year compared to AAA titles. Of course, we have Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War, particularly, are two big examples. Were supposed to come out this year, but they got pushed back. We were supposed to have major news about Final Fantasy 16 by the end of the year, but the director of that game came out and said, "Sorry, COVID, got to push back, and I'll let you know next year." Final Fantasy 16's expansion got delayed by like a couple months. A lot of these things happen, but indie games, I think, thrived this year, and several of them ended up taking a very good amount of awards this year for the Game of the Years, and particularly Inscription and Death's Door. There are some other highlights of the year, including one I have on my list, Ender Lillies, and a lot of other games that have come out. And I think it's great that they've been highlighted more so than others, because we have people who I think are hungry for more experiences faster. And thankfully, there's no shortage of indie games.
Yeah.
So that's really neat.
The infrastructure's there, and there was
Sable and Chicory. Sable and Chicory were two others. Sorry, there's a lot.
I know. And I think Forgotten City was indie too.
Yes.
But there was the indie showcase that happened not too long ago, and we got an Oxenfree 2 was shown off. And I don't know if
Kentucky
that was
Route Zero. This year?
There's a now I'm that bunch of and I don't know if that was the first time they did that indie showcase, or if that's like the third or fourth year they've done it. I don't remember.
For who?
There was like an indie showcase.
Yeah, for like E3, right? Like at E3?
I don't remember if it was around E3.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was part of the Summer Games Fest thing or not.
Well, you had several different ones, because there was the cozy game, like, and it was just games that are like cozy, like you're just, like is like making making potions, unpacking is winning ton of awards. A game about just unpacking your room after moving, which I hear is great. I'm not making fun of it.
I think I've heard the same thing, that like it's unexpectedly emotional, because like there's all this nostalgia and you unpack things and you're like, oh my god. Yeah, anyway, in the game. But okay.
Epic versus Apple.
Yep, which we last time I think the last update on that was that
settlement was reached. No, judge made a ruling on it.
Yeah, she said, Epic, you're not supposed to do what you're doing. Apple started to clap, and she said, just a second, Apple. We're going to go ahead and say...
I'm not finished.
I'm not finished. Just a whitest kids you know reference there for you. And that's a Thor Ragnarok reference there for you. So the judge is like, hold on a second there, Apple. I don't think you get that 30% cut if they go out of store. And I think they can do that. And Apple said, yeah, but then their children are going to get killed or something, right?
That's the go-to defense. But what about your children, Judge? What?
the children, and the judge is like, yeah, not buying it. Cole Phelps, doubt, X button. And that, I think that's the latest update on the most ridiculous... probably my favorite fact about Epic versus Apple is that they called it Operation Justice or whatever.
Whatever.
And again, I made this point before. D-Day, when they were coming up with the name for D-Day, it was Operation Overlord, right? Mm-hmm. One of the biggest battles, mankind history, attacking the Nazis, ended up killing Hitler, all great results, right? It was Overlord, which is one of the units in StarCraft, right? That's not a cool name. But they're to get a 30% cut on the freaking Apple Store. Epic goes with like Operation Freedom. Like, what? Really? You're really that dramatic about this?
Operation Freedom Fries.
Yeah, I forget what it was, but it was ridiculous. Yeah. The
should have named it Operation Apple Core.
Nice.
Nice.
That's free. Epic next time you decide to pull some bullshit again.
I want to run through a few other things that I have noted down. Lots of companies bought other companies.
Yeah,
so
tons.
Sony bought Housemarque and Bluepoint and a few others. Epic bought Harmonix, Mediatonic. Tencent bought some stakes in companies.
Xbox bought Bethesda.
Yeah, that was late. I think that was September.
Was that
yeah, I mean 2021 and 2020, basically one gigantic long fucking year. But that was...
Wasn't that this year? I'm pretty certain that was this year.
I thought that was early.
I'm pretty certain that was this year.
Was that this year?
That was this year.
Okay, I'm going to put money on
very
it was
certain.
late 2020, but it may have been this year. I don't know.
Connor's our fact.
And then
Jamie, can you look
March
that up,
9th, 2021.
March 9th?
Yep.
Wait, hold on. No. Make sure it didn't happen in September.
On the 21st night, specifically.
Not this, like, 2 weeks ago or whatever, or 2 months ago, but I mean, like, September 2020. That may have been their
I see.
official
Okay,
announcement.
sorry. Yes, it was announced last September, but it happened this year.
this year.
Okay, so ipso facto, no retracto.
50. Well,
I'm still right.
50,
Whatever.
The transaction happened this year.
Yeah, Roblox embarrassed themselves.
Absolutely, they did.
Working with or working against People Make Games. People Make Games did some great coverage on Roblox. Roblox must have like a ham sandwich working their PR department because it's pathetic what they did in response. They literally have a ham sandwich on the table and they're like, "Ham, what do we do about this?" And all right, great, send them a blog post. That'll get them ham.
I think we should say your mom.
Anyway, yeah. So, was there anything else you wanted to run through?
Just a personal favorite story of mine, and I talked about this and linked, but we hope to talk to him in the coming months. But this involves gaming preservation, but the English localization of a long lost game from Working Designs, Goemon Mystical Ninja Zero. That got released, which, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago on the podcast, that was a game that was pretty much done, but Sony basically was like, no, we don't want it on our system, even though they finished it, and it was the game to cause the studio to close down, which they were responsible for some of the best, bringing over and localizing some of the best JRPGs on the Sega Saturn and the PS1. Anyways, they finally found it. They found one of the final builds of the game and dumped it online. You can play it if you have a PS2 emulator, and without, something, these guys trying to find this build, we never would have seen this game, and plenty of other stuff happening like the last week I talked about the Work Boy or the Page Boy for the Game Boy, something that was being built but never came out. There's so many interesting stories that we as normies never get to see, but behind the scenes there's so much cool stuff being made and done that gets lost forever because someone decides it isn't good enough or whatnot.
We should start using the word preservationists.
Yeah.
Instead of pirates.
That's the word.
Preservationists.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, pirates, emulation. No, it's like they're preservationists. Maybe once you start doing the work, we'll call them pirates. But until what they're doing isn't saving game history, we're going to call them preservationists.
It belongs in a museum.
It belongs in a museum.
I have those flashes. At work today, I was rearranging stuff on the wall, and I pulled off 2 goddamn Skylander stylus pens that were still sealed, like brand new. And I was like, no one's gonna fucking buy these. I'm gonna throw these away. but then that quick thought was like 20 years from now, like look at this, and it's like, no, that's not going to happen. Probably, hope not. But you know, that quick flash
in
of like
20 years, some kid now is going to be nostalgic about Skylanders.
Oh, of course, but like
and sell their child to buy it.
But that's what, like, quick anecdote, like, you know, when it comes to preservation, that I gained a large amount of, not that I didn't have respect for collectors before, but when I went to Japan, I went to a museum for older anime, and when you went to the collection, the merchandise section, not where you buy stuff, but where you see all the merchandise they made throughout the years of there was stuff there that I would have never known existed, and on the plaque you would see this was donated by this person who collected this thing, like, like, you know, a machine, you know, the old machines that you'd see outside of grocery stores. You put a quarter in, like, you know, a little kid rides on it. It's like, we're just going to throw this away because who wants it anymore? And some guy's like, hey, can I have that? And just like keeps it. Like, if he didn't do that, we wouldn't have had that anymore. So I mean, I kind of relate it to that, but very interesting.
Absolutely. Are we ready to talk about our games?
Yeah.
At the end.
We want to give a massive shout out to the sponsors of this episode. They have been silently supporting us since the very beginning, and we felt it was time to give them some love. The like and share buttons have been at our side since episode 1 of the podcast. They can be found just beneath this episode. Please give them a click, it helps us greatly. If you're feeling lucky, click the bell icon to enter for a notification anytime we post new content. You may be surprised by what you get.
Okay, so we'll go through favorite games, favorite soundtracks, favorite characters. Who knows how long this is going to go? I was going to quote Willy Wonka, but then I forgot. No one knows where we're going.
Oh, yeah.
But we'll start with...
Acid Trip.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's such a horrifying... That movie is so good. Anyway, we're not talking about Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka.
Welcome to the movie discourse.
Cinema discourse.
So I figured we'll do our honorable mentions.
I do have some, don't I?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I have my favorite games. I liked Returnal a lot. I made a video about it. But when I look back on Returnal, all I can think about is how much more I enjoyed Hades.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
And I don't want to sound mean because it is great. I'm so glad Housemarque found, like, I'm so happy they weren't stuck in that rut of making some trend chasing battle royale game. Because now look at the market. Nobody gives a shit about battle royale games, right? It's nowhere near as popular as it was 2 years ago. So I'm so happy that Sony bought them up, that they made, which I loved Returnal. Sci-fi mystery, a little bit of horror undertones. I love the entire thing. Yeah, like after Hades, it's just like every roguelike is just, it just makes me want to play Hades because Hades is so good. But Returnal checked so many boxes for me, and the combat was excellent. The combat was
is
excellent.
The best part of the game.
Boss
absolutely.
fights were incredible. Freaking light shows, laser shows.
Burn your retinas. I do think although Returnal was definitely a favorite game of mine, I am one who definitely takes enjoyment out of obviously the story. And although I think Returnal has a really neat story underneath, I do think that the way it's presented could have been better for at least the average player. I think if you really want to tell a story that's, you know, psychological or has different undertones, you walk a fine line.
Sure, yeah.
Because there are like satirical movies that have a certain message, but unfortunately, if you don't do it right, people just take away. That movie was funny. Like, they don't take away the message of like what the movie is. Yeah. And I think with Returnal, the message of the story is a bit muddled because of how fragmented the story.
Yeah, and it's told abstractly. Yes. It's like Twin Peaks level of non-linear psycho schematic, which isn't a word that applies here, but you know I'm trying to get to
David Lynchian.
David Lynchian, yeah, so that kind of thing. The other game that we both have is Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah,
I don't think I'm going to end up finishing that, but I had a lot of fun with Ratchet and Clank.
Ratchet and Clank was a lot of fun, absolutely stunningly gorgeous, and there were some very, very cool set piece moments in it. When I was playing Ratchet and Clank, I made the statement, and it's a terrible statement. I felt like I was playing a video game. And obviously, yes. Like, yes.
It's like a sports radio when somebody, here's a football player. It's like, oh yeah, thanks.
There's a guy who knows how to use his arms and legs.
yeah, exactly. Alex Rodriguez. Now you see here, Aaron Judge, he's a baseball player. It's like, thanks, A-Rod. Thanks for the.
But I what I meant by that is when I was playing it, I didn't have any sense of excitement. Not that there wasn't any excitement there, but it was something that I had done before. In the, growing up in the PS2 era and the Xbox era, it was safe as far as gameplay goes. And there was nothing wrong with it because at the end of the day, it's a very good package, but it didn't, elevate the game up to like my favorites of the year, but it was still an excellent game. That's not to diminish what it did. And it had some glitches in it too. So that was weird.
It did have some weird glitches.
For me, it had some glitches. Yeah.
Couple more on here.
Yeah, Forza Horizon 5. Absolutely. Yeah, I played it, and I didn't mention that I played it because I played a bunch of things during that week, and I only named a couple. But if you've even played any of the other Forza Horizons, I think you owe it to yourself to play this one. I still believe Forza Horizon 4 is my favorite one due to the European setting is, I think, a bit better than the Mexico setting. I mean, the Mexico setting, you do have like volcanoes, you have like the beach, and you do have other areas, but it's a little bit less. I'll use the word populated. Yeah, a little bit less to look at. Although what you are looking at is gorgeous.
Sure,
just a little less to look at. But I think gameplay wise, graphics wise, it's just a wonderful game and still one of the best racers out there. But besides Forza Horizon 4, also one of my favorite games of the year was Tales of Arise. One of the actually, I think the only JRPG I finished this year, which nothing wrong with that. But Tales of Arise, I think for a series that's been going on for the last 20 years, it really revitalized and changed how the series operates, which was really much needed after the last several entries, because it became the same thing over and over. So with the new graphics engine, because I think they moved to Unreal, and gameplay changes, it really grew to one of the best action games I play. Even though the JRPG was an action RPG, one of the best action games I played this year. Enjoyable story, a little bogged down towards the end with exposition, but beyond that, it really, really deserved its RPG of the year, I think, from the Game Awards.
Okay, awesome. So hidden gems wise, these are games that I guess we think didn't get the press they deserved or whatever. I have a bunch, so I'll try to get through them briskly here. So Cloud Climber by 2-Star Games is free. It's on Steam. It's 15 minutes. It tells a really cool story. It makes you feel a lot of different emotions. It's a brilliant little tiny piece of storytelling. Highly recommended. It's a narrative-driven first person. You walk around, you read some papers. That's all I'm going to say. Check it out.
Real quick, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you.
Yes.
There is a game that I heard about this year, and I was going to bring up to you, but since you said something about Cloud Climber, there's a game called Before Your Eyes that came out this year.
We've talked about this, haven't we? Is it with the
webcam and
the webcam and every time you blink?
The game changes. I hear it's not terribly long, but I hear it's an excellent story. I just haven't got to it yet.
I think we've discussed that before.
I'm gonna check out this Cloud Climber.
So there's Cruelty Squad by Consumer Softproducts. Cruelty Squad is the sort of low polygon Hitman-like shooter that Connor did not like because it made him feel. It's a very dystopian. It's set in the dystopian sci-fi world.
Full on triggered my fight or flight sense. I just wanted to leave.
It's very
kind of felt dirty.
It's very cynical. You play as an assassin who's hired by a company to go essentially assassinate other companies. So it's very dark. It's very like I said, cynical. I would recommend it. I had fun. My main issues with it is that it seemed the levels are open-ended and there's a lot of ways to get past them, but it always felt like it was super easy to get through them. And I understand the idea is to go back through them and replay them with new upgrades, but new upgrades were really expensive, so I never really got into the game, but I really enjoyed it anyway. Bloodspear by the Bloodspear dev team. So this was a student project. This is free on Steam as well. It's about a game where you have a spear and you're a knight and you throw this spear and the spear collects blood. And as you collect this blood, you get special abilities, but you have to constantly kill enemies to consume their blood. That's all I'm going to say about it. It was a phenomenal little surprise. Definitely check it out.
Good little 30-minute game.
Yes, good little 30-minute game. Sprocket by Hamish Dunn. So, Sprocket is Kerbal Space Program, but tanks. So you're building tanks to get through different obstacles. Building a tank simulator, or like this, I think is really difficult because tanks were not built in vacuums, right? They're just like airplanes. So over the course of and I'm not an expert in this, but over the course of World War II, whatever, tanks were built with specific purposes. So there was not a tank that was fit for every single purpose that tanks could fulfill. Unlike today, where the U.S. Army, I think, only has the Bradley and the Abrams. They only have 2 armored fighting vehicles that you could classify as tanks. I don't think they have a third one. But back in the day, it's like the United States Army and Germany and Japan and all those countries had a billion different tanks because they were first developing them. But anyway, the point I'm trying to get to here is what the game does that's really interesting is it has you build tanks and it has you pass them through challenges, but these challenges give you different contexts. So like the first one is a World War I challenge. You have to get through trenches and you have to get to the other side, which means you're limited to the technology of World War I, so you have really slow engine, stuff like that, and you have to pass over trenches. So you have to make your tank wide enough that when it goes over the trench, it doesn't fall in, right? That its center of gravity sort of is centered enough for whatever that it can make it over, right? And that means your tank's going to be heavy because it has to be really long. So that presents certain engineering challenges, as opposed to other levels where you're playing against like 5 tanks that are spread out surrounding you and they sort of attack you, and you have to figure out a tank that can take all these other tanks out. So it's cool in a sense because it has you building tanks that fit all these scenarios, just like tanks were early on in the history of the armored fighting vehicle. You can tell I've watched too many Bovington Tank Museum videos. Because you're building tanks for specific scenarios, right? So for specific engineering challenges, which is really fun and really cool and somewhat realistic, I guess, if you're talking 60, 70 years ago. But anyway, I would highly recommend checking that out. Dyson Sphere Program, base building game that I really liked and really enjoyed. Industria, first person shooter. I reviewed it with inspiration from like Half-Life. And it was made by Bleakmill. I don't know if it's Bleakmill Games or Bleakmill Studios, but Bleakmill with Industria show that they really have a grasp on pacing and tone. It's such a magnificent 4 hours of gameplay where they really know how to make you laugh, creep you out, make you sad, make you think about things. It's so well done, and it packs it all into 4 hours. It was such a delight. And then the last game I want to talk about, In Sound Mind by We Create Stuff. A really zany, fun horror game. Oh, it's not super scary, but it does have some horror elements. That's the one where you're a therapist who is trying to figure out what's going wrong with his patients. You've got a talking cat with you, and it's very funny. It's very silly, but it's also kind of creepy. Highly recommended. Single player. So those are the games that I wanted to get out in this section. Go ahead, Richard.
The first one I want to talk about, there are 2 Metroidvania type games. The first one's called Ender Lillies, which I mentioned earlier. The full name is Ender Lillies, Quietus of the Nights. And it's a side-scroller Metroidvania type game, and is an incredibly gorgeous animated game where you play as a girl who was woken up inside of a church in a village that has completely been decimated, and there are terrifying monsters trying to kill you, like very grotesque-looking monsters, and you have the ability to call forth particular knights to kind of attack for you. You can also dodge. It's very Hollow Knight-esque. I'm supposed to use the word Dark Souls here, and I don't want to use Dark Souls because it's not fair. I'll use Hollow Knight because Hollow Knight is also difficult.
Sure.
But These knights are very interesting looking because they're all somewhat undead. Like there is a nun that is like all bloodied and gory, and she attacks for you. There's a knight that is all bloodied and gory, and he attacks for you. So you have all these different abilities. And she also, even though like you're supposed to protect her, she has very cute, like when she dodges, she doesn't dodge. She like dives head first because like she's a girl, she can't do anything. But I mean, like, you know,
She's a child.
You know what I mean? She's a child. Yes, a child. But if you have a chance to check out some gameplay, it's really, really gorgeous, and the soundtrack is really awesome. But yeah, it was overwhelmingly positive on Steam. So if you ever check that out, that's a good one. The second one is that I thought was a hidden gem, was called Record of Lodoss War, Deedlit and Labryinth.
So this is a tactical shooter, right?
No.
Okay.
It's also a side-scroller, Metroidvania-esque game, but if you're not familiar with the Record of the Lodoss War series, it's actually originated in Japan as a D&D replay. So a D&D...
Okay.
Are D&D replays common over here? Anyways, D&D replay is basically you take the transcripts of a D&D session. They basically make it into a story that's readable by.
Okay.
They actually just make it into a readable story. So, Record of Lodoss War is basically a D&D session that somebody created it into a series.
Oh, neat.
Which is really neat. But it's been going on since the 80s. But this tells of a particular character named Deedlit who goes through the castle and tells the events of what happens before one of the other stories in the series. But this one was in early access for a bit, but finally released this year. This one, unlike Ender Lillies has really gorgeous looking artwork that's kind of obviously moving. But this one is more pixelated graphics, actual like bit pixels, but it's very fluid and very gorgeous looking, very bright as well, whereas Ender Lillies is really dark and gloomy and raining all the time. But that is also one of my other games. But that is it. That's all I got for hidden gems.
All right, Connor.
I have three. First being Wildermyth by Worldwalker Games. It is a tactical RPG where you play as a group of adventurers solving problems. It's very much just a D&D game packed into a tactical RPG. Your characters have different powers they can do. As you progress through the game, your characters get older. And they have a retirement age, and that can change depending on, if they do certain things, blah, blah, blah. But your characters can also have kids, and those kids can take up the mantle from their parents, inheriting their gear and continuing on the fight.
Awesome.
Very cool. Love that in RPGs. I also have The Life and Suffering of Sir Brante, which is
I remember this, yeah.
It is a storybook. That's it. It is. You're reading a novel. It is a playable novel where all your decisions matter. There are things that happen in the first 3 pages of the book that affect you while you're in your 30s, because you play your entire life of Sir Brante. You play literal birth to death.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. Well, 3 deaths because you get 3 lives.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Dorfromantik. Dorfromantik is a tile laying puzzle game that is
You have my attention.
that is just 100% Zen.
Oh, okay.
You get points based off of matching like sides of a tile to other like sides. So forest to forest, plains to plains, city to city. Connecting river tiles, connecting train tiles, and if you connect train tiles, there will be a train that goes back and forth on the track.
Yay.
You connect enough water tiles, there'll be a boat that just goes around. It is amazing.
That sounds awesome.
Sorry, I'm watching gameplay. You know what this reminds me of? But you put it together is like, those like I Spy games. But you're like building a town, and then like it just starts moving as you build it. Because there are some that like when you click people, they do stuff. When you're trying to find stuff. So. Oh, I like the hexagon style.
Yes,
anyway, sorry, you can move on.
All the tiles are hex based. Again, I've spent hours just relaxing at night playing this game because it's like Townscaper. There's not a lot to it, but the things it does is just really fun and really calming.
Okay, cool. Moving on to soundtracks. I thought Aliens Fireteam Elite had a really, really good soundtrack. Now, this is partially cheating because you don't Like it's kind of like if a Star Wars game has a great soundtrack, it's like, oh yeah, thanks.
Oh, okay.
You know what
Okay.
I mean? But
I don't remember the soundtrack of the game. All I remember is the sound of pulse rifle fire.
well,
Sound of all my commandos screaming.
Yeah.
So I thought it implemented a lot of the I don't know if all of the music was original or not, but I just wanted to put it in there anyway because I really enjoyed the stings and the certain like sounders that they took from Alien and some of the music like while you're running around the Sulaka, whatever ship you're on, and it plays while you're like waiting to go into games and stuff. I thought was really good, but it also utilizes it in really cool ways. Like I love when you shoot an alien in the head, it plays a little like a little. It's a string. It's like like a little. I can't
stab.
do it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like like in a horror movie, like a quick hit on a string is like
Something does that. Doesn't Deathloop do that?
I don't know if Deathloop does, or it might do something similar, but it's cool because it makes it scarier as you're playing because as they're running at you and you're shooting them in the face, it's like you hear these string spikes, these and you're like, oh god, you're trying to get them away from you. So I thought that was really neat. I know. I think some people probably didn't like it because you end up getting a ton of headshots because there are a ton of aliens and you're firing a ton of bullets. So chances are you're going to get a ton of headshots at any given moment. But I really enjoyed, and Aliens Fireteam Elite was really simple. It was really simple, but it was executed perfectly well, and I just wish there was more there.
Yeah.
Because it was so much fun. Just a dumb shooter. I played as the smart gun person, which was so much fun.
I was the medic.
And it was exactly all it needed to be. You're just shooting hordes of aliens. There is third-person combat with androids that have weapons, but that's, decent Gears of War combat, whatever. But man, when you're going through spaceships and you've got a horde of aliens crawling down, and they like crawl on the ceilings and on the sides, so you're aiming all around in front of you.
Unless you're using the smart gun, then you're just aiming down the center of the hallway, and it's aiming for you.
Smart gun is literally, the guy in South Park that like sits. Mm-hmm. That is literally firing the smart gun. Like you just take your hand away from the keyboard and you just click, and you sort of just go back and forth a little bit, and you're just doing all kinds of killing. But but anyway, the utilization of the soundtrack I thought was really good. And maybe if we include sound design too, whatever. I make up the rules, it's our podcast. It was really well done there because they included all the alien sound effects perfectly. And then Midnight Protocol, which I've complained a lot about, did have a really cool soundtrack. And the soundtrack was dynamic. So in the game, because there's a turn counter, as the turn counter gets to where it's about to fail, the soundtrack goes from like a really slow, like dun 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 dun, and then as it gets more intense, it's like dun 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 dun, and then if you're one or two turns away from the end, it's like dun 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 dun, like it gets more increasingly intense as it goes on. But that'll go back down if you. I know I'm doing a lot of like skate to be. I'm doing like a bunch of random.
It just reminds me, like, as you get closer to doing it, just like the SpongeBob meme, careful SpongeBob, careful SpongeBob.
But if you can, so if you are close to the ending, right? Say there's other instances where you're being chased by like a hostile program. If you eliminate that program, it goes from like a dun, 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 it goes from intense back to like dun 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 dun, and you're back like sneaking, right? And it all flowed really well. Yes, I know I'm doing the sweet that be doopy. Yeah, I get it. Whatever.
You're doing a Jack Black.
Oh god. Connor, you're going to talk about Deathloop. Deathloop does have really good music. Go ahead.
It does. I thought I put that down.
No,
I think we all agree.
You put down Death's Door.
I did put down Death's Door. Yeah.
But yeah, no, Deathloop. They knocked it out of the park with their music.
Yes.
It perfectly fits everything in that game.
It's so great too that like when you get caught or found, it's not like
dun 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 dun.
I never felt like it was like a doom and gloom, like, oh shit, I got caught. It was just like funky, like kind of like, all right, yeah.
It's like James Bond. It's like ding 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 ding.
Please stop.
Sorry, I was doing it on purpose. I'm trying to.
But the crescendo when you exit combat, when enemies stop looking for you, is always satisfying.
Yeah. And that's a great audio trigger to know that, like, okay, I'm good.
I'm safe.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yep. And that game, if we were doing an award for best implementation of the DualShock or the DualSense, that has great feedback on the DualSense.
Yeah, really
Phenomenal.
does.
Phenomenal.
Do it. Phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
Thanks, Jim Romes.
Richard.
Arugula.
One of my favorite soundtracks of the year is Death's Door. And Death's Door has a really, really calming soundtrack for the most part. It's very beautiful and very orchestral, of course. And when you're in your not normal battles, but when you're in boss battles specifically, it knows when to ramp up and be very, I use the word triumphant, but when you're just kind of on your own, wandering about, kind of feels like you're just playing. I'm going to say this, and I know it's terrible. It seems like you're doing something very calming, like fishing.
Like whimsical or
no?
Is it like Red Dead 2 calming? I guess.
Think like Sims. No.
Not Sims.
I was gonna say Sims main menu music, but that's a little bit too chipper. But it's all I can say is that it's just calming, despite how the game itself plays.
Okay.
But like I said, during boss battles, there's definitely like music that ramps up and it's a lot more bombastic. But most of the time, I think the music for the game purposefully makes you feel a bit less on edge than you probably would assume the game is.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I have two. And then the other one is Persona 5 Strikers. I also forgot that came out this year, back in February.
Yeah.
Which it's free on PlayStation Plus now, so if you got PlayStation Plus, download it. But anyways, I don't really have much more to say on Persona 5 Strikers, because if you've played Persona 5, it's the same composer, Shoji Meguro. So it's the same type of very, very modern, funky, like jazz.
Delicious.
Yes, it's good stuff. Mixed with some pop, but wonderful soundtrack.
Okay. I want to apologize here because usually with the favorite performance, I've got the actors' names down and actresses.
Oh, sure.
But I have neglected to do that. So, but we don't need to scramble to look up each person.
That's all right.
So you may have to pause the podcast and look it up. Go ahead, Richard.
Real quick, cheating. Also, Forza Horizon 5 has a great soundtrack, but that's cheating because it's just compilation of like other songs.
Yeah, okay. So. Tony Hawk Pro Skater remake then. No, I was kidding.
Yeah, sure. All right.
So
Superman.
Yeah.
Lady Dimitrescu.
Maggie Robertson.
I think so, but she was considered one of the icons of this year. Mm-hmm. She wasn't in Resident Evil 8 very much, but I think that partially makes her cool.
Yes.
On one hand, it's like Ghost and Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah.
It's like you didn't know a whole lot about the guy, and they're not in the game for that long, so that kind of makes them mysterious and kind of want to know more about them. And
she is going to be, because like they have that game they're making, Reverse, coming out. That's like a multiplayer where like you play as the villains. She's Tyrant. She's Mr. X. She is going to be a figure in the Resident Evil series from here on out. Yep. Absolutely.
But some of my favorite moments from Resident Evil 8 were in the castle when you're running away from her and stuff. When you're in the wine cellar and you just have those creepy ass zombie guard things that look so creepy. Yeah. And once she finally does start chasing after you, and she's got the long claws and stuff.
It's very great.
And some of the best moments of the game happen when she cuts off somebody's hand. Oh, yeah. Just one of the best things ever. I would put Ethan Winters as one of the best characters, but we all know the couple of lines he says. Fuck you, man. Ethan Winters.
Where's Rose?
Yeah, but I think Lady Dimitrescu is probably a lot of people's favorite character from this year. Chernobylite was a game, so I put down Olivier from Chernobylite. Chernobylite has a lot of really interesting characters. So Chernobylite is a game that first person kind of survival. Well, I guess it is survival horror. Takes a lot of cues from Stalker, stuff like that. You're in Chernobyl. You've got mutants, human enemies, stuff like that. But it's a very I want to do a video on it. I was planning on it, played a lot of it. It dropped off for a few reasons, and I want to get back to it. But Chernobylite is a really human game, because you get to know. It's one of those games where you have a hub base, and then you leave the hub base to do a mission. You come back at night, and you get to talk to your companions.
Oh, cool.
And you really learn your companions a lot. And each of your companions are really distinct and cool, and that makes you want to talk with them. And they each have their own opinions about what's going on in the world. They each have their own histories that sort of paints how they look at the world now. And the main character of Chernobylite is also his own person. So it's not a blank slate. So they have conversations. But I always thought Olivier was really interesting because he was somebody that's a mercenary. So he has combat experience, and he comes from sort of a tough background. And he always had really interesting things to say about the state of the world that came from his experience as a mercenary in Afghanistan or the Ukraine or whatever. So I always thought that was a really interesting way. Another thing that Chernobylite does, I guess I'm just talking characterization in general now with Chernobylite.
But that's important.
Yeah. Though. The main character in Chernobylite, who I'm blanking on the main character's name right now, he's like in his 40s or 50s. But he is from an Eastern Bloc country before the fall of the Soviet Union. And I think I talked about this when I talked about the game a while back. But when the main character, talks about the former Soviet Union, you can almost hear, and I don't know if this is true or not, but you can almost hear the writers of the game as if they're speaking their own experiences from living in an Eastern Bloc country.
Growing up there, yeah.
While the Soviet Union was, in the 70s or 80s or whatever. I don't know if that's the case. If it's not, it's really impressive because it's not just someone who's angry. You can hear the real remorse in the dialogue and also the actor's voice. And so that makes it interesting because it's one thing to go, oh, the Soviet Union sucks, whatever. But it's another thing to have a character who really does sound like they resent those years. They hated those years because they knew what it was like to grow up in an under oppressive regime, whatever. And so I think that's really cool. And you don't, in a game that's mutants and, and special powers and AK-47s, to find time to have a character that is that thought-provoking is cool. And that's just the main character. Olivier, the other characters are just like that. But I put down Olivier probably because he was my favorite. Celine, I thought was really cool. Jane Perry, Connor put down all the... I told you not to.
Too bad.
Renegade. Robin Atkin Downs was Olivier. There's also there's a Russian and an English voice. Celine, Jane Perry, and Returnal. I liked Returnal's story a lot. I thought Celine's character was interesting, especially once you started to learn things about her, because you weren't sure if she was totally a good person or what was going on. She was definitely an interesting person, that's for sure.
She definitely sold the evolving erraticness.
Yes.
And insanity that began to creep up on her
Yes.
as the audio files went on.
And she addressed that, which I loved, because she would pick up an audio file from a previous self, and that previous self would sound like a cultist. Like she was, I'm going to sacrifice myself to the larger beings, the larger celestial beings. And she would go, am I going to turn into that? Is that me? That is not me, right? And that's such a cool little dynamic. And of course, as the game goes on, that's kind of what begins to happen in a sense. So it's really neat to see that as you're playing through. So I get, the way Celine was written. Is there anything else we can say about Colt and Juliana from Deathloop?
Probably
Jeez.
the best character chemistry of the past 10 years, at least.
Sure. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
No, I agree, man.
Yeah,
I agree.
I mean,
I would hold them up with them, Kratos and Atreus.
Ellie and Joel.
The main character in Atlas, like in BioShock, even though the main character doesn't talk, but I think they have a dynamic in some sense, or even him and Fontaine, or not Fontaine.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no.
Yeah.
I think
Cortana.
so. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
I absolutely 100%.
And maybe it's funner that they are pitted against one another.
Yes.
So there's a playful rivalry going on there that makes
And then
and because the game is funny,
and
it
then
makes it fun when they're
in
insulting each other.
isolation, each character is just really well acted out. The few minutes where Colt is trying to figure out what to name his gun is one of the best parts of that game, and it's just him shooting out names
Yeah, sure.
and not settling on a name.
Yeah, him in the mission, like, I mean, when you start shooting electrical boxes, he starts singing about how he's like the electric man and whatnot, and it's like, oh my gosh, like it is a role that they had a blast recording, I think, and I love them both.
Yep. And I didn't expect Deathloop to be that funny.
Yeah.
But you just root for Colt, and you also sort of root for. It's like it's hard to be mad at Juliana because they're just so funny when they yell at each other. You know, you kind of just want them to make up and be happy again. Because you're like, you guys are hilarious together.
Yeah.
Come on, you know. So yeah, it's so much fun. And of course, every time, like the beginning moments with Colt, where he's like, "What the fuck's going on?"
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah,
It's so
absolutely.
funny. You know, so great. Yeah.
It's really cool because they leaned into the retro futuristic, like pseudo 60s 70s style, along with a bit of blaxploitation, particularly when it came to Colt and how he like voices his character and how he reacts to things. Anyways, wonderful character. But yeah, I put up the cast of Guardians of the Galaxy, just all of them. If you want something that's just not even more of the same, I think honestly better than the movie cast. If you enjoy the movie cast, I think the Guardians of the Galaxy game really does this justice. I know that I talked about it, and I believe I said on the podcast that I told my friends, like, if they wanted to play it, to just watch it. I mean that in the sense that, like, these characters played their roles so well, and each one of them has a moment to shine in the game. They each have their own, like, small segment of going through, and I think surprisingly, Drax has one of the most poignant overarching stories in the game. It all really, I don't want to use the word hit home, but they knocked it out of the park for sure. And I think they are definitely one of the biggest reasons why that everybody ended up loving Guardians of the Galaxy this year. Despite how I feel about the gameplay itself, there's no doubt that the story and their dynamic together was one of the best this year. Probably for me, right under Colt and Juliana.
Okay. Only a few co-op / multiplayer games that we really loved, or that we jotted down at least. Sure. I already talked about Aliens Fireteam Elite. I want a sequel so bad because it was so much fun.
Just came out.
I know. I'm just saying.
Maybe not a sequel, but more to do than run down a hallway just blasting aliens.
Because it was just so well made, and it was so creepy, and when you imagine, I want to play Aliens, right? When you watch the movie, and then I want to play that, but it's not Halo. I want to play the Aliens video game. You think of Aliens Fireteam Elite, right? So I just want more of it. I want more, like that old commercial. I want more, right? Anyway, I already talked about it.
Again, I would like to see more from them other than just shooting galleries.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I just want more in general.
Okay, that's fair.
Devour by Joe Fender and Luke Fanning. So Devour is a co-op horror game, and what you have to do is you have to stop.
You're cultists trying to stop your cult.
Yeah, you're cultists that have turned on your cult, and you're trying to stop the summoning of a monster. And you run around a map, and you have to pick up objects and... like, for example, on the first, light spoilers because you kind of have to figure out what to do. But once you figure it out, then it's just a matter of accomplishing it. And each mission has something a little different you have to figure out. But in the first mission, you have to stop
the summoning of Azazel.
The summoning from Azazel, right?
Sick.
So the Azazel's almost there, and she's inhabiting the body of the cult leader, and they sort of stumble around the map like a run and hide horror game. But they're not always hostile. You'll run into them, and they're just sort of walking down a hallway all creepy, and you can sort of run right past them. You're fine. But eventually, they'll start to hunt, and then you have to hide and run from them and stuff. Your flashlight is what you have to shine at them. You have to do the UV setting, and it'll make them run away. But like in the first level, you have to find bales of hay. You You have to put hay in front of a goat. The goat has to come over and start munching at the hay.
Then you pick up the
goat. You run over to an altar. You sacrifice the goat, and you have to do that 10 times, and that stops the summoning from happening.
Oh, all right.
But that whole time, there are other demons and monsters that start to come after you. So it gets harder and harder and harder. The more goats you sacrifice.
Yeah. Okay.
So it gets really chaotic, and you're running everywhere, and you have to. If the monster catches you and you go down, your teammates can revive you, so it's not over.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of like avoiding enemies and trying to get all the objectives done before things get too out of hand. It's really hectic, but it's really fun.
And the game has genuine moments of horror.
Yes.
Especially in the second level when you're in the asylum.
Oh yeah. Because the asylum's monster is terrifying, and she tiptoes everywhere.
And whispers.
So you'll be looking around a room and you'll just hear, and you turn around.
And she's just staring at you.
Yeah, because she's not hostile. She's just terrifying. Yeah. Really.
And it has some of the best voice acting.
It does have some really good voice acting that it does.
Especially by Dr. T. Walker.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's you. I don't want to talk about
the best voice acting, me.
Go ahead, Richard. You had a couple on here.
I asked if this was, on here, but no one responded.
We'll say yes.
But GTFO.
It's really fun.
This last year when we played it all together, I had a lot of fun, and I think that it deserves some praise for being actually difficult.
Yes, sure.
As a game.
Unless you browse the forums and figure out how to cheese the game.
Sure, yeah, of course. And that's with a lot of other games. But I think that I really respected GTFO's
commitment,
yes, for you to play your own role.
Yeah.
And above all, just communicate with your team. I think it's genius that in order to access terminals, you actually have to type in things, and
you have to actually do queries.
Yeah, and you can find things throughout the map just by doing that. And I think it's wonderful. Eventually, I do think that the gameplay loop somewhat gets stale. From the go to that point, you got to stay there and wait. Oh, door's not working. You got to wait till it fixes itself, or you just got to wait till it loads. But the constant movement of if there's several points, you have to go to each one. I do think that's really cool. And the monsters are absolutely terrifying. And I don't even think I've seen all of them. I think I've only seen some because they changed the.
Yeah. I've put a few more hours into it. I ended up getting to a point where I didn't like it as much.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially if you're not playing with dedicated people.
Yeah, that's one thing.
Yeah,
there are a lot of weird exploits that make it not fun too. Which when you play with randos, they're doing exploits a lot, and it's just silly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never really found the right balance between difficulty and just frustration, because it's one mistake and you might as well just quit out because you're just in a hole. But the few times I had a good game, I really enjoyed it. It's out now, out of early access. I'm not sure what has changed, but I definitely want to give that one a new go, because the atmosphere dropping into dropping down with your team. You hop out, it's dark, it's quiet, turn off your flashlights, sneaking around. The atmosphere is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Yeah.
And then lastly, Halo Infinite. I know it came out towards the end of the year, but already I have put over 50 hours into its multiplayer, and I am a very, very big fan. If you the closest thing you can get to... No, that's wrong. I was going to say closest thing you can get to classic Halo, closest thing you can get to Halo 3, but still modernizing it.
Sure.
I think that Halo Infinite
sense.
is probably what a large majority of the newer generations are looking for, although they may complain about the time to kill, because of the armor and the health. They're not used to that. They're used to one-hit kills.
I got 2 words for you. Get
good. I thought you were going to say plasma pistol. BXR, baby.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, that's it.
I'm looking forward to playing Halo Infinite's multiplayer, because I started Halo Infinite single player, and let me tell you, 3-4 hours in, and it's already one of my favorite games that came out this year.
It's good. There's a lot of people who are talking about how much they like it, which, I understand. I like it too.
I cannot wait until the co-op comes out. I'm so disappointed it's not out now.
Yeah.
So I have 2 main takeaways from my time with Halo Infinite right off the bat. So the top one is you mentioned it, and I think it's something that a lot of people have always wondered about, is like they play the second level of the first Halo and they go, what if you made this an entire game, right? You go around, you rescue Marines, Covenant dropships come in, you have a Warthog, you non-linear, right?
Yeah.
Silent Cartographer is another option. There's levels in Halo 3 that are like that too, and 2. So this answers that question. They're like, okay, we'll do that. We'll make Halo, the second level of Halo 2, an entire game. The other thing is the 30 seconds, right? So there's the famous Jamie Griesmer line, who was a developer with Bungie for the original Halo. He said that the 30 seconds, it was 30 seconds of fun that happened over and over and over again.
The gameplay loop.
That's his famous quote. And you can see that throughout the philosophy of all the Halo games. And I've made a couple videos breaking down some of my favorite levels of the Halo, but in Halo 2, Delta Halo, the mission Delta Halo, you drop with ODST, so it's a really cool drop, shock, assault on a defended position, and then you get a Warthog, you drive a Warthog around, you have to drop a bridge, then you get a Scorpion tank, then you drive the Scorpion, then you get into a part where you have a sniper rifle, and there's a sniper rifle battle, so there's all these little tiny changes of momentum and context on the player that makes the level different and fun, right? Well, now Halo Infinite, it instead of setting the player on that path, now it's just, here's a fob, spawn a Warthog, or spawn a tank, or you have a DMR, you can go by yourself and scout out a base, or you can collect these Marines over here and do a big loud assault with a bunch of Marines following you on your way there. So now that 30 seconds mentality where it's like, we're going to construct a level and here's a minute here, here's a minute here, here's a minute here, here's a minute here. Now it's, here's a fob, we're going to let the player decide how they want to spend that time going to the next objective. Now, it's not necessarily brand new, right? Far Cry kind of does that and stuff like that. But I think they nailed the combat. The combat's excellent. The enemies are fun. It's much of the same enemies thus far. I haven't faced anything new. The enemies talk a lot.
Yeah.
Talk a lot more.
They do.
And they're funny sometimes. But they're also a little more intimidating, which I really like. Because the Banished are a different thing. The Covenant, they're a separate Covenant force, and they're not as scared of you as like the Covenant was, and that's kind of scary. But like even Jackals say things, which Jackals in the past were just screamed.
They talk now.
But now they talk, and you can hear them say things like, "I found him. The trophy is mine," or "I kill you," or. But if you knock out their shields, they'll say, shield gone, can't fight, and they try and run from you or whatever. So there's a lot of interesting things like that make the enemies really cool. I love the new art design, or the return to sort of the Bungie art. It's much closer to that.
Yes, it is.
And you can see right from the beginning of the game, which I thought was a phenomenal first impression, you're going through some Forerunner structures. And it is not like Halo 4 or 5, where there's just angles everywhere. It's like a Jackson Pollock
crystals.
There's little tiny indentions, but it feels much closer to the original to like Halo 2 and 3 and Halo, where things are flatter and simple. They have textures on them, but they're not as like jagged and crazy angles and stuff as the newer Halos. And I really love that. And that kind of goes with all the enemies, right? The normal brutes just have sort of plate armor on, right? The new Warthog, the new design of the Warthog just looks so sick. I love the way it looks. It's so that simplistic design takes it back to roots that I enjoy much more than Halos 3 than Halos 4 and 5 were like, where it was really loud artistically. So I have a lot more game to play. Oh my god, I'm loving I love that you have like enemies like mini bosses that you can go take on.
Yes.
I love that
like
so much.
Wanted guys,
and they have little stories about them. I love the grappling hook. Today I used the grappling hook to get to the top of a mountain because I unlocked the cooldown where it speeds up the cooldown.
Faster, yeah. So
I climbed to the top of a mountain, then I climbed to a top of a tower, and there was an Easter egg at the top of this tower, and I was so happy. I found that there was a skull up there, and there was a really funny Easter egg that is a very famous Easter egg. I won't spoil anything. But I'm really disappointed that co-op isn't out yet, because how much fun would co-op be? You imagine one guy, you're playing with a buddy, the buddy grabs a sniper rifle, you're like, okay, you go on that mountain, I'm gonna run in with an assault rifle, you give me cover, that'd be so much fun to do. So yeah, I'm having a ton of fun with that. Some other games real quick. Everspace 2 by Rockfish Games. I only played Everspace 2 for like 20-ish hours, made a video about it. It's still in early access, but it's one of those games where it's so good that I am not, I force myself to stop because I want to experience everything when it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Because they went away from the roguelike, which is what Everspace 1 was. Everspace 2 is much closer to just fly around, you have a mission, you have quests, upgrade your ship, sell this ship, buy a different ship, whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's so good. The combat's excellent. The story is really interesting. Everspace, the original Everspace, did a good job balancing the sci-fi mystery element of space with the space combat bullet hell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Combat that it had. And some of that sci-fi mystery is still in Everspace 2 that I'm really excited to jump into. So I don't have a lot to talk about with Everspace 2 except that I enjoyed the hell out of it, and I can't wait until it's closer to full release. We all love Deathloop.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
I've talked about Deathloop a lot, so you guys can...
We talked about Deathloop a lot, too.
Oh, yeah.
While you were gone, 2 weeks you're gone, yeah.
Yeah, I think...
Which I finished it, so, I don't know if you have, but I know you've played as much
Definitely not have.
Yeah, but...
Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 8, which I think was my favorite Resident Evil since the Resident Evil 2.
The remake, yeah.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, no, I still probably think Resident Evil Village is my favorite game of the year, just overall.
Really?
Yeah, I do. And I haven't talked to you about, wait till you finish Deathloop and we'll talk about it. But yeah, I had so much fun in Resident Evil Village. I think that one of my favorite things that media does, particularly with movies and games, is that if you know exactly what you're doing and are good at doing it, for me, that would elevate the piece of media even more. And Resident Evil Village knew exactly what it was. It knew exactly what it was doing. The parts that were thrilling, were absolutely thrilling. The first 4 or 5 hours when you're in the castle is some excellent gameplay. All of the characters are hokey and ridiculous at times, especially
it's like ridiculous. It's hilarious.
Especially Chris, especially Eisenberg.
Yeah.
I loved all the settings of the village, and some of them are, why are they here? Why is a metal factory here in a European village? Resident Evil is no longer something to take seriously. It's something to have fun with. And I think that Resident Evil was just plain and simply a lot of fun.
Oh, except for one part.
Which part? Oh, well, yes. Which is excellent in its own right.
One of the most terrifying things I've ever had to do in a video game.
Yeah,
so
excellent.
Well done.
Uh-huh.
But
pet a spider, isn't it?
It's not a spider.
It's got a pet a spider.
That would be scary.
Chin scratches.
But when I think about this, the most scared I've been of a game before, or the most scared a game has made me, I'm not going to spoil this because the lead up to it, something's going to happen, but nothing prepares you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so well done. It is so, and the rest of the game is not like that. The rest of the game is a lot of fun. It's shooting, it's monsters, it's Heisenberg, it's cheesy B-movie horror, whatever. This is straight up Silent Hill terrifying, and it's so good. But anyway, yeah. Resident Evil 4 VR, another Resident Evil.
Hell yeah.
Which I still can't believe that was a thing. I still can't believe that was
not only was it a thing, but they didn't screw it up. They actually, I think, excelled the game to another level. And it's easy to see why with all the sales and reviews on it. It was incredible. A great translation of an old game to the VR format, and I need more. Not of Resident Evil, that too with Resident Evil 2 and 3, but the translation of older games to VR, to the VR format. It works. Do it.
Yep.
Plain and simply.
Yep. And yeah, not even necessarily VR, but I would love I would love something like a Metal Gear Solid remake, but you're the camera. But it's still top down, running around, but your head's the camera or whatever.
Yeah, like if you played I think both of you have played like Super Lucky's Tale.
Sure.
Like just VR,
Yep, that'd be amazing.
It's wonderful.
But probably the coolest moment, and I think I still have this recorded, maybe not though, but the coolest moment in Resident Evil 4 this year was when I figured out that you could dual wield.
Yeah.
So there was a moment where it's an arena, like a bunch of the townspeople ambush you while you're in an arena, and I had a shotgun and a pistol, and I had people on my left, people on my right, and the person on my right had a chainsaw. So I was firing with my left hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm shooting with my pistol in my left hand, holding off the villagers on this side. Then I see the person with the chainsaw jump off of like a catwalk and then start to charge at me. So with my right hand, so I'm shooting my left hand. With my right hand, I reach and grab the shotgun and I like blast him in the face with the shotgun. Yeah. So I've got this awesome feeling. Now, of course, you if you're watching me from like the hallway, I look like a moron because I'm in like, I'm in my PJs, but it felt so sick because I'm like this badass Leon guy who is the worst but also most hilarious character of all time. And I'm shooting, and then like I pull my shotgun out and do one shot to a chainsaw guy on the other side, and so phenomenal. Yep, absolutely phenomenal. I guess those are my favorite games this year. But you guys have more games. Go ahead.
Yes. Death's Door is one of my favorites of the year, and I think that throughout the years of gaming, there are a lot of developers who kind of like to take a genre and add to it. They like to improve it. And so, like with simple side-scrolling games, like, of course, I'm going to say it, Castlevania and Ghouls and Ghosts and other games like that, they started thinking, what if we had RPG elements to it? What if we had exploration? What if we had,
Sure.
blah, blah, blah. And I think some of the more simpler game genres have kind of, I don't want to say fell by the wayside, but they're not in focus as much anymore. And I think Death's Door really decided to take the format of just a simple old school Super Nintendo-esque Zelda game and just make that. And I don't think Death's Door does anything. It doesn't do anything new. It doesn't do anything extraordinary. But I think it does everything very, very well. Added to its aesthetic, added to its characters and its small but very, neat story. It's one of my favorite games of the year. Its music is great. Its fighting is great. And I love playing as a little crow who's a Death Reaper.
It does look awesome.
Yeah. So it's just
another one
just
on my list that I'll never get to because 2022 is going to be insane.
Exactly.
So on mine, I have again Wildermyth. Again, just play it. It's a really good tactical RPG, and again, tactical RPG. Not it's not a hardcore.
Yeah.
You got to know certain things about the genre. No, you can play it on easy mode, and you still get like taught how to do like positioning, because that's what matters in the game. Just having two of your guys on opposite sides of the enemy, attack first with one side, and then the other guy is a guaranteed hit.
I looked at the gameplay when you're talking about it, and that aesthetic alone is really
it's
awesome.
beautiful.
Yeah,
It's like
little
storybook
cardboard
style.
cutouts. Yeah, like you're moving.
awesome.
It's like a board game. It's like you're playing a board game. Yeah, it looks really neat.
It's exactly like how my D&D sessions go, because I have 2D standees that I represent for players and enemies. So it's really nice. It's really fun. The progression of the game is interesting enough just to keep going. And one thing I told you, and I forgot to mention it earlier, there are different stories in the game. There's, I forget how many pre-written stories there are, but each one was written by a different writer.
Yeah.
And each writer is credited.
Yeah, which is really neat.
And then there's game modes where it's just you can play 3 chapters or 5 chapters, and there's no like overarching story. It's just stuff is happening, you're playing in the world. And I haven't been able to experience it yet because I just picked up the game, but there is also co-op in it.
Oh, very cool.
So I want to try that. I want to see how that works co-op wise. If I'm operating a party and you're operating a party, or if like we're splitting characters or something.
Sure.
Either way, it's just building more towards the D&D game.
Of course.
And I always need more D&D in my life.
Yeah.
And then finally, I have Humankind by Amplitude. Humankind is the change that the Civilization 4X type games needed.
Okay.
In Civilization, you pick your country at the start of the game, and that kind of locks you into your playstyle. If you pick one that has a cultural focus, you're going to be going for cultural victory, unless you want to, put yourself into a super difficult position and trying to, go against the grain. In Humankind, you start as a Neolithic tribe. No cultural identity. How you progress into becoming one is by progressing as a civilization. You start finding things that, develop your independent culture through technology and cultural advancements, or by just building up people. And another way you can do it is just by hunting. Just hunt until you develop a culture around hunting. And then you get to choose your first civilization that you play as. And I think this is the biggest thing that I think needed to be done, because now I can start as a science-producing civilization, and then if I get stuck into a war, and that war goes into the next age, I can swap focus and become more of a military civilization, and then swap back or swap to mercantile or whatever. So it allows a much wider gameplay, and everything carries over. So, you have your... I pick the Babylonians a lot because they're a good Bronze Age, Classical Age, or Ancient Age civilization, because they produce more science. So you're able to get more of the scientific technologies out of the way and get your bonuses from that. And they get buildings that produce science. And once you progress past them, you get a passive science bonus. So you're building your civilization from the ground up. And it's the change that needed to be done, because civilization has gotten stale, where it's just, here comes Gandhi with 90 nukes again.
Sure. Okay, interesting. That just about covers everything. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. We post videos, a couple new videos in the works right now. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.